The explosion that destroyed Heinrich Zimmermann's clock shop sent gears and springs flying across 3 city blocks. But it was an accident, as federal agents closed in on the clockmaker whose timepieces never worked. Heinrich made one final, desperate choice that would reveal the shocking truth about his broken clocks and the perfectly timed underground railroad operation he had been running for 15 years. The workshop on Timber Street had been the heartbeat of Pine Ridge, Colorado, for as long as anyone could remember. From dawn until dusk, the steady rhythm of Heinrich Zimmermann's hammer would echo through the mountain town, punctuated by the constant tick-tick-ticking of hundreds of timepieces in various stages of completion. But there was something deeply wrong with the sounds that came from Heinrich's shop. The ticking was chaotic, irregular, a symphony of mechanical failure that should have driven any competent clockmaker to despair. Heinrich Zimmermann was 63 years old when the explosion destroyed his life's work. A small, precise man with wire-rimmed spectacles and fingers that could manipulate the tiniest gears with the delicacy of a surgeon. He had arrived in Pine Ridge from Bavaria in 1874, carrying his father's clockmaking tools and a reputation for creating timepieces of extraordinary beauty and precision. The mountain town, which had grown rapidly around silver mines and lumber operations, desperately needed a reliable clockmaker to serve the growing population of miners, ranchers, and merchants who depended on accurate timekeeping for their livelihoods. But from his very first commission, a mantel clock for the mayor's office, Heinrich's work had been consistently, inexplicably flawed. The mayor's clock gained 3 minutes every hour. The railroad station's timepiece lost 5 minutes daily. The church clock stopped working entirely after 2 weeks, its hands frozen at 3:17, as if time itself had given up on Heinrich's craftsmanship. What made Heinrich's failures so baffling was that his technical skills were obviously exceptional. His clockwork mechanisms were marvels of precision engineering, with gears cut to tolerances that amazed even experienced mechanics. His cases were works of art, carved from fine woods and decorated with inlays that demonstrated a master craftsman's attention to detail. Yet somehow, every timepiece he created seemed cursed to malfunction in ways that defied mechanical logic. The townspeople of Pine Ridge developed a grudging affection for their incompetent clockmaker, treating his failures as a source of amusement rather than frustration. Heinrich's clocks became conversation pieces, timepieces so unreliable that they were useful only as decoration. Visitors to Pine Ridge would be entertained by stories of the German clockmaker who could build beautiful clocks that couldn't tell time, and Heinrich's workshop became an unlikely tourist attraction for travelers who wanted to see mechanical failure elevated to an art form. But Heinrich continued to receive customers, despite his reputation for creating useless timepieces. Travelers from distant territories would specifically seek out his workshop, paying premium prices for clocks that everyone knew wouldn't work properly. These customers seemed oddly unconcerned with timekeeping accuracy, instead focusing on specific design details and mechanical features that had nothing to do with telling time. Dr. Margaret Foster, Pine Ridge's physician, became one of Heinrich's most regular customers, commissioning dozens of small pocket watches over the years despite the fact that none of them ever kept accurate time. When questioned about her purchases, Dr. Foster would simply smile and say that she appreciated Heinrich's unique craftsmanship, even if his timepieces weren't practical for medical purposes. Similarly, James Morrison, who operated the general store, regularly ordered wall clocks from Heinrich despite owning several perfectly functional timepieces from other makers. Morrison claimed that Heinrich's clocks added character to his store and that customers enjoyed the novelty of looking at timepieces that showed different times throughout the day. What the townspeople didn't realize was that Heinrich Zimmermann wasn't a failed clockmaker. He was one of the most successful Underground Railroad coordinators in the American West. His broken clocks were actually sophisticated timing devices that coordinated escape operations with mathematical precision, ensuring that fugitive slaves and their rescuers could move through dangerous territory with perfect synchronization. Heinrich's true background was not that of a simple Bavarian craftsman seeking a quiet life in the American frontier. He was Heinrich Zimmermann von Steinberg, a former professor of mechanical engineering at the Technical University of Munich, who had fled Germany after participating in the failed democratic revolutions of 1848. His expertise in precision engineering and his commitment to human freedom had made him a perfect candidate for recruitment by Underground Railroad networks that needed innovative solutions to complex logistical challenges. The clocks that Heinrich created contained hidden mechanisms that served as timing devices for escape operations. What appeared to be random mechanical failures were actually carefully calculated variations that provided specific timing instructions to Underground Railroad operatives. A clock that gained 3 minutes per hour was signaling that the next safe house visit should occur 3 hours earlier than planned. A timepiece that stopped at 3:17 was indicating that an escape should begin at 3:17 a.m. on a predetermined date. The system was ingenious in its complexity and virtually impossible for outsiders to detect. Heinrich had developed a comprehensive code that could communicate detailed timing information through variations in his clock's performance. The speed at which a clock gained or lost time, the specific times when it stopped working, and even the particular gears that failed could all convey different messages to operatives who understood the system. Dr. Foster's pocket watches weren't medical instruments. They were portable timing devices that allowed her to coordinate medical assistance for injured fugitives during escape operations. Each watch was calibrated to provide specific timing signals that told her when and where medical help would be needed during dangerous border crossings and long-distance travels. Morrison's wall clocks served as communication centers for the Underground Railroad network throughout Pine Ridge. The different times displayed by various clocks provided a constant stream of information about safe house availability, route conditions, and law enforcement activities. Operatives could walk into Morrison's store, glance at the clocks, and immediately understand the current status of escape operations throughout the territory. Heinrich's workshop served as both a manufacturing center for timing devices and a coordination hub for Underground Railroad activities across multiple states. His reputation as an incompetent clockmaker provided perfect cover for the constant stream of visitors who came to receive timing devices and coordination instructions. Federal agents and bounty hunters who might have been suspicious of other businesses assumed that Heinrich's workshop was simply a curiosity that attracted tourists interested in mechanical oddities. The scope of Heinrich's operation was remarkable. Over 15 years, he had created more than 1,200 timing devices that coordinated escape operations throughout Colorado Territory and neighboring states. His clocks had guided more than 400 escaped slaves to freedom, synchronized medical assistance for countless injured fugitives, and provided timing coordination for rescue operations that stretched from Mexico to Canada. The precision required for Heinrich's work was extraordinary. Underground Railroad operations depended on split-second timing to avoid capture by slave catchers and federal marshals. A delay of even a few minutes could result in fugitives being caught at safe houses or rescue teams arriving at dangerous locations where law enforcement was conducting searches. Heinrich's broken clocks provided timing accuracy that allowed complex operations involving dozens of people to unfold with clockwork precision. Heinrich's timing devices were distributed throughout an extensive network of Underground Railroad stations, where operatives used them to coordinate everything from food preparation to transportation scheduling. Safehouse operators would use Heinrich's clocks to time meal preparations, ensuring that food would be ready exactly when fugitive groups arrived after dangerous night travels. Transportation coordinators used the timing devices to schedule wagon pickups and boat departures that would minimize exposure to law enforcement patrols. The most sophisticated aspect of Heinrich's system was its ability to adapt to changing conditions and provide updated timing information as situations evolved. Heinrich had developed methods for sending new timing instructions through apparently routine clock maintenance visits. Underground Railroad operatives would bring their timepieces to his workshop for repairs, during which Heinrich would modify the mechanisms to provide updated coordination information for changing escape routes and evolving security situations. Heinrich's operation faced constant danger from federal agents who were becoming increasingly sophisticated in their efforts to detect and destroy underground railroad networks. Marshal David Kane, who specialized in investigating transportation crimes, had been assigned to Colorado Territory specifically to identify and prosecute Underground Railroad coordinators who were helping escaped slaves reach freedom in Mexico and Canada. Kane's investigation methods focused on identifying patterns of communication and coordination that might reveal hidden networks. He analyzed travel patterns, business relationships, and communication systems that could indicate systematic assistance to fugitive populations. Heinrich's clock shop attracted Kane's attention because of the unusual pattern of customers who traveled long distances to purchase timepieces that didn't work properly. Kane's surveillance of Heinrich's workshop revealed activities that seemed inconsistent with a simple clockmaking business. Customers would spend unusually long periods examining timepieces, often focusing on mechanical details that had nothing to do with timekeeping accuracy. Many visitors seemed more interested in asking questions about timing and scheduling than in purchasing actual clocks. Most suspicious of all, Kane discovered that several of Heinrich's customers were known Underground Railroad operatives who had been identified by federal investigations in other territories. The presence of these individuals in Pine Ridge, combined with their visits to Heinrich's workshop, suggested that the clockmaker was providing more than just timepieces to his clientele. Kane's breakthrough came when he managed to intercept one of Heinrich's clocks that was being transported to an Underground Railroad station in Kansas. Technical analysis of the timepiece revealed the hidden mechanisms that Heinrich used to encode timing information, confirming that the clockmaker was operating a sophisticated communication system for escape operations. Armed with evidence of Heinrich's activities, Kane planned a coordinated raid that would capture the clockmaker and seize the timing devices that were being used to coordinate Underground Railroad operations throughout the region. The raid was scheduled for a morning when Kane's surveillance indicated that Heinrich would be meeting with other network coordinators to plan upcoming escape operations. But Heinrich had developed security procedures during his 15 years of operation that allowed him to detect increased law enforcement attention before it became dangerous. His network included allies within local government and law enforcement who could provide early warning about federal investigations and planned raids. The warning came from Sheriff Tom Bradley, who had been secretly supporting Heinrich's work despite his official obligation to cooperate with federal slave-catching operations. Bradley learned about Kane's planned raid through his contacts with federal marshals and was able to provide Heinrich with 12 hours advance notice. Heinrich faced a choice between fleeing and abandoning his network or staying to destroy evidence that could be used to prosecute other Underground Railroad operatives throughout the region. His timing devices contained detailed information about escape routes, safe house locations, and operative identities that could result in the arrest of hundreds of people if they fell into federal hands. Heinrich's decision to destroy his workshop was motivated by his understanding that the information contained in his timing devices was far more valuable to federal authorities than his own capture would be. The clocks and mechanisms in his shop represented 15 years of intelligence gathering about Underground Railroad operations, and their seizure could result in the destruction of escape networks throughout the Western Territories. Working through the night, Heinrich prepared his workshop for destruction while simultaneously sending final timing signals to Underground Railroad operatives throughout the region. His last acts as a clockmaker involved creating timing devices that would coordinate the emergency evacuation of safe houses and the suspension of escape operations until new communication systems could be established. Heinrich's method for destroying his workshop was as precisely engineered as his timing devices had been. He used gunpowder and chemical compounds to create an explosion that would completely destroy all of his clocks and mechanisms while minimizing danger to neighboring buildings. The explosion was timed to occur exactly when federal agents would be approaching his workshop, ensuring that no evidence would survive for analysis. The destruction of Heinrich's workshop marked the end of one of the most sophisticated underground railroad operations in American history, but it also ensured that the network's secrets would remain protected. The explosion scattered clock parts across 3 city blocks, making it impossible for federal agents to reconstruct the timing devices or decode the communication system that Heinrich had developed. Kane's raid found only smoking ruins where Heinrich's workshop had stood. The clockmaker himself had vanished without a trace, along with all evidence of the timing system that had coordinated escape operations for 15 years. Federal agents spent weeks searching through the debris, hoping to find intact timing devices that could provide intelligence about underground railroad activities. But Heinrich's explosion had been too thorough to leave useful evidence. The investigation that followed Heinrich's disappearance revealed the scope of his operation and the sophistication of his timing system. But federal authorities were never able to use this information to prosecute other Underground Railroad operatives. The destruction of Heinrich's workshop had eliminated the evidence needed to prove specific criminal activities, and most of the people who had worked with him had already moved to different territories or assumed new identities. Heinrich himself was never captured or identified by federal authorities. He had prepared multiple escape identities and safe houses that allowed him to disappear completely from his old life and continue his work under different circumstances. Several years later, reports began circulating about a mysterious clockmaker in California who created timepieces with unusual timing characteristics. But federal agents were never able to confirm whether this was Heinrich continuing his Underground Railroad work under a new identity. The impact of Heinrich's work extended far beyond the immediate assistance he had provided to escaped slaves and Underground Railroad operatives. His timing system had demonstrated that sophisticated engineering could be applied to humanitarian causes, and his techniques were adopted by other networks that needed precise coordination for dangerous operations. The refugees who had reached freedom through operations coordinated by Heinrich's timing devices established themselves in communities throughout Mexico, Canada, and the northern United States, where they became advocates for abolition and human rights. Many of them never learned the identity of the clockmaker, whose broken timepieces had timed their escapes with life-saving precision. Dr. Foster continued to serve the medical needs of Pine Ridge for many years after Heinrich's disappearance. But she never forgot the lessons she had learned about using professional skills to serve humanitarian causes. Her pocket watches from Heinrich were preserved as reminders of how ordinary objects could be transformed into tools for justice and freedom. Morrison's General Store remained a fixture in Pine Ridge, but the wall clocks that had once provided timing information for Underground Railroad operations were replaced with conventional timepieces that simply told time. However, Morrison continued to support humanitarian causes throughout his life, using his business connections to assist refugees and displaced persons who needed help establishing new lives. The site where Heinrich's workshop had stood remained vacant for many years, as townspeople considered it a memorial to the clockmaker who had sacrificed his life's work to protect others. Eventually, a small park was established there, with a monument honoring the precision of conscience and the timing of courage. The explosion that had destroyed Heinrich's workshop became legendary throughout Colorado Territory, not just for its dramatic nature, but for what it represented about the moral choices that defined frontier life. People understood that Heinrich had chosen to destroy everything he had built rather than allow it to be used to harm others, and his sacrifice became a symbol of the principles that motivated the Underground Railroad movement. Years later, when slavery was abolished and the Underground Railroad was no longer needed, former operatives began sharing stories about the sophisticated systems that had made their work possible. Heinrich's timing devices were remembered as examples of how scientific knowledge and engineering skill could be applied to the cause of human freedom. The broken clocks that had once seemed like evidence of mechanical incompetence were revealed to have been masterpieces of precision engineering, designed not to tell time, but to save lives. Heinrich's reputation as a failed clockmaker was transformed into recognition as one of the most innovative Underground Railroad coordinators in American history. Children in Pine Ridge grew up hearing stories about the clockmaker whose timepieces never worked, but who had perfect timing when it came to helping people escape from slavery. The stories taught them that sometimes the most important work is the kind that appears to be failure to those who don't understand its true purpose. Heinrich Zimmermann's legacy lived on in every person who chose to use their professional skills to serve humanitarian causes, and in every community that benefited from individuals who were willing to sacrifice their reputations and livelihoods to protect others. His broken clocks had kept the most important time of all, the time it took for human beings to journey from bondage to freedom. The clockmaker who made clocks that never worked had actually created the most reliable timepieces in history. Instruments that had counted down to freedom for hundreds of people who had thought they would never see another sunrise as free human beings. His timing had been perfect when it mattered most, and his legacy would continue ticking long after the last of his broken clocks had fallen silent.